Let me ask you something. When's the last time you felt genuinely connected to your camera? I don't mean impressed by it. I don't mean blown away by its autofocus, its 8K video, or its 30 frames per second burst mode. I mean connected as in inspired to slow down, frame the shot with intention, and feel something when you press the shutter. If you can't remember, you're not alone. Because in 2025, something really strange is happening. Quietly, subtly, but undeniably. Photographers, hobbyists, and pros alike are starting to walk away from the mirrorless hype machine. And yeah, you did hear me right. The same mirrorless revolution that had people selling off their DSLRs like they were outdated relics. The same mirrorless cameras that reviewers said were the future of photography. Well, it's starting to look a little bit like a bubble, and guess what? That bubble may have just popped. This is Static, and welcome back to Static Archives. Today we're discussing the mirrorless camera bubble. So why are so many people, even influencers, vloggers, or industry veterans, starting to feel burned out by the mirrorless race? Why are photographers returning to DSLR or film, and sometimes even their phones, looking for something? Why are photographers returning to DSLRs, film, or even their phones, looking for something they can't get from a $4,000 flagship camera? Well, we're gonna unpack that today because this shift really does say a lot, and not just about cameras, but about photography itself. And I guarantee by the end of this video, you'll start to see mirrorless cameras in a completely different light. So let's get into it. So let's rewind to around 2018. The big three camera manufacturers, Canon, Nikon, and Sony, were all in on mirrorless essentially. Sony led the charge, Canon and Nikon scrambled to catch up, and Panasonic, Fuji, and others tried to carve out niches in between. Reviewers, influencers, and blogs were pretty much buzzing. The language was clear. Mirrorless was lighter, faster, smarter, and at this point, DSLR was dead. And to be fair, some of it was true. Mirrorless cameras brought legitimate innovation, real-time, high autofocus, in-body stabilization, high refresh EVFs, 4K and 8K video, faster frame rates, lighter bodies, all of those things. These weren't gimmicks. These were real technical advancements. But somewhere along the way, the industry and the community started treating specs like a religion. And I know a lot of you all have noticed this too, especially if you're really deep into the world of photography YouTube. So camera launches weren't about photography anymore. They were about which brand had better autofocus algorithms, which sensor read out faster, which one had the most stops of dynamic range. And slowly, something really did begin to shift. But real quick, before we go any deeper, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out on what's coming next. I've got plenty more deep dive content like this on the way. Also, check out the links in the description if you want to keep up with me on social media, become a channel member, or any of that good stuff. But also, question for you real quick before we get back into the video. Do you think mirrorless cameras have actually improved photography or just made it easier? And I really want you to think about that and let me know your answer in the comment section down below, because I want to know what you guys think or what you think about this. But anyways, let's get back into it. So mirrorless camera hype didn't just change the hardware, it changed the way people talked about photography essentially. So you've probably noticed people say things instead of what do I want to express or what kind of images really inspire me. We started asking things like which has the fastest autofocus, which lens gives me the most bokeh, or how much dynamic range does this have compared to the last model? And sure, features are important, especially for pros who rely on performance, but here's the thing. Features don't really make you a better photographer. Your vision does, your story does, and the way you can compose a photo does. Yet somehow we started associating photography excellence with camera efficiency. The logic became the more powerful the tool, the better the result. But if that's true, why are so many photographers saying they feel disconnected? Why do you see Reddit threads, blog posts, and YouTube videos of creators just feeling burnt out, just uninspired, or overwhelmed by the very gear they once obsessed over? Well, let me tell you why. Because mirrorless cameras, for all their innovation, have turned too many photographers into testers, spec chasers, or FPS addicts instead of real legitimate creators. We don't shoot to express anymore, we shoot to test. We don't chase moments, we chase firmware updates. And we don't feel anything behind the camera. We just wait for the tracking box to turn green and boom, we click. So just like any bubble, whether it's housing, crypto, tech, it starts with the real excitement, real innovation, and then it spirals into excess. So the mirrorless market saw insane launch cycles. New camera every 6 months, $4,000 flagships, $3,000 lenses, whole new mount systems, brands constantly telling us why this model fixes what was broken in the last one, which came out 10 months ago, and we bought it. Not just with money, but with time, energy, and attention. We watched hour-long reviews, debated overheating specs, pixel-peeped ISO charts, and somehow convinced ourselves that this new camera was going to really change the game. But spoiler alert, it didn't, because the highest limit in photography has never been the camera. It's been the person behind it. So what happens when you max out on features, when your camera already does everything you could ever imagine? That's where the bubble really begins to burst, because now photographers are realizing they're not happier or they're not better. They're just tired of upgrading, testing, and optimizing. And worst of all, they're still not creating what they want to create. That's the crack in the hype, and I can really see that it's starting to grow more and more as the day goes. So now let's talk about what's actually happening, the response to the hype, I guess. And that is that more photographers are returning to their older cameras, like their DSLR and film cameras, like the Canon 5D Mark III, Nikon D750, D850, and even some APS-C bodies from over a decade ago. Some are going all the way back to film, or others even just using their phones, and that's not because they're better, but because they're a little more limiting, and those limits, they force intention, they demand thoughtfulness. You don't rattle off 30 shots a second on a film camera. You slow down, you frame, you wait, and you really compose a true photo. And in that process, people are rediscovering the joy of photography. There's also a surge in people using manual focus lenses or vintage glass and adapted optics. Not because it's more efficient, but because it's just more of an interesting and unique experience. And even in digital workflows, there's a growing interest in shooting in JPEG only, or turning off previews basically, which adds friction on purpose. Why? Because friction creates focus. And in a world where everything is instant and automatic, some photographers are saying, let me make this harder so I can really hone in on my skills and enjoy the process a little bit more. So there's also a deeper shift happening, and it's not just in the way we shoot, but in what matters. We're starting to value authenticity over technical perfection. Photos that feel raw and imperfect and real are resonating a lot more than ultra clean, hyper sharp, perfectly lit shots, because in a world with saturated AI edits, filters, and flawlessly sharp content, realness is still always going to cut through all of that. That means slightly misfocus, grain, flare, shadows, emotion. All of those things are still keys and big hitters. And guess what? You don't need a $4,000 mirrorless camera to do that. In fact, sometimes all that power gets in the way. Photographers are really beginning to realize that what makes a photo powerful isn't the sensor, it's the story behind it. Not the megapixels, but the moment. That's why the mirrorless bubble is really beginning to deflate. Not because the tech isn't good, but because it missed the point. So where does all this leave us? Well, it's up for you to really decide as the photographer. You decide your path and your journey as you go. So whether or not you decide to shoot mirrorless or DSLR or maybe even film or phone is up to you. But remember to never lose track of what your true intentions were or what your goals were before you even began getting started taking your photos. And at the end of the day, what you use only matters to you, and what everyone else uses shouldn't affect you. So again, this isn't a mirrorless hate video. This is more so just talking about a trend that I see happening within the market that you seem to care about, or we also care about. So anyways, I appreciate you for watching. If you made it this far, of course, check out the links in my bio if you want to follow me on social medias or become a supporter of the channel. And I appreciate you for watching. Subscribe if you want to find more videos like this, and I appreciate you. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.